What's up, y'all? You're now listening to the What Now podcast. I'm Dr. Spencer Dupre, owner of Empower Chiropractic.
And I am Dr. Zach Thompson, owner of Within Chiropractic. The purpose of this podcast is to document and share the experiences of two young business owners as we open our own brick and mortar chiropractic practices. Join along as we discuss all of our wins, our losses, insights, and the many, many lessons we learned.
As a disclaimer, none of this is ever intended to be medical, legal, or financial advice. Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of the What Now podcast. I'm back. Zach is back off the mountain.
Back in the flatlands of Texas, feeling amazing. 3 days post event.
That's right. Okay, well, tell us about your experience. Tell our listeners about it. For you guys that don't know, Zach just took on the 29 Everesting thing where you try to climb Mount Everest, but in Utah. So basically, Zach, you hiked up a mountain for 3 days, 2.5 days. Tell us about your experience. What'd you learn?
Yeah, so a little bit more background. The event, Jesse Itzler, Mark, I always forget how to pronounce his name, but awesome dude, and then Colin O'Brady, 3 dudes that just push the limits on life. They created this event, 29 Everesting, where they decided they wanted to hike Mount Everest until they realized that there's a 60% chance of death, and they like their families too much. So they put together an ultra endurance event. I'll come back to that here in a second, but they put together an ultra endurance event where you hike up different mountains across the country. They have Snow Basin, Utah, which is where we were at this past weekend. They have Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Stratton, Vermont, Whistler up in Canada, and then the other one is Sun Valley, and I'm not too sure where that one is. But we did Snow Basin, and what we had to do was hike up a ski slope or multiple ski slopes that the length of one lap was 2.3 miles with elevation gain of 2,300 feet. So basically 1,000 feet per mile. And if you have done the 12-3-30, hot girl walk challenge on the treadmill, you probably get to about 300 feet, just to show how big the elevation gain was. And the percentage, we were probably on a 25% incline, which is not possible to do in Texas unless you have a really crazy treadmill. But yeah, so we had to hike in order to have hiked the same elevation as Mount Everest, we would have hiked 13 times in the span of 13 hours, which at first sounded really easy. And I think that's the biggest lesson I learned is I thought it was going to be a piece of cake. And first couple times up the mountain felt really, really good. And then I quickly realized, as I posted on Instagram yesterday, but quickly realized that my goal was not to finish, at least this time around, but to push Morgan, my fiance, as far as I could without her, crying or, really pushing past her limits. And so we pushed for 33 and a half hours. We slept for roughly three and a half hours in between. And we got 10 hikes in. Hike is just the worst way to put it. It's not a hike. It's a climb. There were moments where we were getting our hands down into the dirt and just trying to bear crawl our way up there because it was so steep. But it was brutal. It was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done, for sure.
Man. So yeah, I was just looking at my Garmin from my run this morning. My total vertical ascent was 39 feet. So I'm right there behind you.
Yeah, that was our joke for a lot of people when, you're hiking with 250 other people and you're like, oh, where are you from? And they're like, oh, I'm from Utah. And we're like, oh, so you're used to this kind of thing. And they're like, yeah, sort of. And they're like, where are you from? And we're like, we're from Dallas. And if we hike for 6 hours, we might gain 100 feet of elevation. It was gnarly.
Yeah, it's more like walking up here. That's really climbing up there. Yeah. Well, man, okay. Well, so since we're both on this personal development journey through physical fitness and training, what was your big revelation? What's your one lesson? What's your biggest takeaway from this? I know you said like, your whole goal is not to finish, but it's to push Morgan. But what do you learn about yourself?
Mm. Uh, I think quite a few lessons. I would say the first two. First one was before we even started. As soon as we pulled up to the event on Thursday afternoon and we saw just the first part of the hike, I immediately knew that I should not even remotely have any expectations or thoughts about any sort of event before I've actually done it. And I think that really relates into business where, we kind of opened our doors almost a year ago for both of us. And we may have had false or way too optimistic of expectations for what was about to happen or about how hard it was or how successful we would have been so fast, those types of things. Because as soon as we got through that first 500 feet or the first quarter mile, um, I knew that I really underplayed how hard it was going to be. And my training showed that. There were days where I'm like, oh, I don't need to do the 8 hour hike that they're recommending or the 8 hours on the treadmill that they're recommending. I'll be okay. I've done a marathon. Um, that was just not the case. And so really, really learning I think expectations are always a really hard thing to balance, but learning how to go into things a little bit more stern and being like, well, I don't know what's going to happen until I show up. And so I need to work my tail off until that moment. So that was one of the big lessons. And then the other one was being in a group of six. The first two hikes we all did together, and it was a lot of fun. And then things started to unravel. People got hurt, people got elevation sickness. But as we were going out through the mountain, you kind of check in with people as they're either passing you or you're at aid stations, you're passing them. And you're like, hey, what hike are you on? And they're like, I'm on number 10. And you're like, man, you're so close. And giving in to other people actually gave me a lot more energy. And what I mean by that was by like supporting the other people regardless of where they were at. I knew that leaving the aid station, I was more fired up to go on the next couple summits because I had just poured into other people and they had poured into me. And so being around like-minded people and serving them and celebrating them actually fueled me up. And so that's a big thing I want to take into our team here at Within Chiropractic is, really praising one another and trying to give a high five or like finding ways to praise the team members and the patients and the practice members as much as possible because that really creates a really strong community inside the office.
Yeah, that's good, man. It is a daunting task. So this morning on my run, I was because now I'm a runner now.
He's a runner. He's a track star.
Stop. That was like 2 years ago. Anyway,
feels like yesterday.
I know, right? But on my run this morning, it was like my longest continuous run in under 155 beats per minute. It was like a solid like 21 minutes at like 140 beats per minute, which was great. It was a little cooler today, so it was easier to control the heart rate. That summer heat is brutal whenever you're trying to keep it slow. But anyway, my biggest revelation this morning was like, man, like the pace that and the consistency in which I choose to move is literally all up to me. Like the track stays the same, the destination stays the same, the people around me are moving at their own pace. Literally, however consistent, however fast I want to be, it's all up to me. And it takes more awareness to check in with yourself than it does to actually watch other people pass you around. Because the people who are moving up beside you, they literally just like, it's a high and by. They just, hey, and then that's it.
Yeah.
But for you, you can't run away from yourself. And so it actually takes more self-awareness, more practice, more diligence to check in with yourself and push yourself more than it is to actually push other people, at least for me. And, I was thinking it was kind of like that in practice and like, we have a lot of friends who are in practice and some people are trying to grow really fast. Some people are trying to grow really slow. Some people are having consistency issues, all the things that we all face. And it's literally just up to you. The time when you lose is when you quit. And so
absolutely,
that's it. And it's just another reinforcement of the element of the game.
Yeah. That was a big thing from this past weekend was we went to sleep around 1:30. I want to say 1:30 in the morning on Friday or like a Saturday, if you want to be technical. And we had done 7 hikes. And by the time I woke up around 4:30, 5 o'clock, I texted Morgan. I'm like, what's the point? If we're just going to go do one more hike, like I might as well just stay in this comfy bed. And she was like, you'll be so upset with yourself if we don't go at least do one. And her goal was to do one more. Shout out Ed Milet or Nick Bear, go one more. And once we got out there and my body got moving, she knew she was in trouble, because I'm like, well, if we're going to do one, we might as well do 3 and get every peak except Everest, because once you do the 10th hike, you've marked off 6 of the 7 highest peaks in the world. And so I was like, we might as well do 10. And so we did. But that initial moment where literally laying in bed, I'm like, well, what's the point of doing one? Sometimes you just have to get your feet on the ground and get the boots moving before you realize, okay, I can do a lot more. And that's so relevant in business, especially in practice, where, you go a couple weeks and you might have some down stats, right? Whether it's new patients or it's conversions or whatever it looks like. And it gets tough in the end of those 2, 3, 4 weeks, however long. It could be months for some. It might be hard to get the boots on the ground and go out to one more screening or go to one more networking event. But as soon as you do one and you start to just go through the motions in those times, is when you really start to see how powerful you truly are. And I think that's really something I've taken away from a lot of this endurance training.
Yeah, I think that's like the it's just different than weight training, because like weight training, like at some point you just hit your max. Like your time under tension is just not there. Like at some point, like you just can't move it. But like endurance training, it's just all choice. It's all you. Like the heaviest thing that you carry is your doubt. And that has been something very it's been very refreshing for me.
For sure.
In my life. So on the theme of training and on the theme of development, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit today with you and with our homies that are listening, kind of what we're doing in order to not only to like we're talking a lot right now about our self-development, but developing our team, and how we're pouring into the people that work with us. And I use "with" very intentionally, because people don't necessarily, or I don't think, should ever work for you. They should work with you. When you are interviewing them, they're just as much interviewing you. And whenever you offer them an extension, you're asking them to, hey, do you want to get on board? Your employees should not feel like, at least to me, dead weight. Shouldn't feel like a liability. They should feel like somebody who contributes, and they should have purpose and feel some sense of fulfillment in your office. And so that's a super big goal for me. So Zach, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about your backstory, like with Joshua, and what you guys are working on right now.
Yeah, so Joshua, our office manager, he came on at the end of November. His first week was actually Thanksgiving week. So I was like, hey, we have 2 days that we're going to be open, and then I fly back to Connecticut for Thanksgiving. Let's see how those 2 days go. Like, you can kind of filter through the office. And at that point, I think we were seeing total, and it was a big win for us because we'd been open for about a month. Like, it was like, we're going to see 30 people in these next 2 days. And I was like, this is going to be really hard. I don't know how I'm going to schedule these people if Joshua's not here. And so for quite a long time, like, his goal and a lot of what he was doing was scheduling people, making sure they're on schedule, making sure they're, if they have to reschedule, he reschedules them. And really something on that note that I think is really important if you are looking to hire, at least early, and I think no matter what, but in my instance, something that Joshua caught on to very quickly was that if someone didn't get a firm, like, rescheduled date, they more often than not wouldn't reschedule, or we wouldn't hear from them in another 2 weeks. And so I was really adamant to him about, hey, when someone reschedules, it's not, let me call you back when I'm ready. He'll sit on the phone with someone for 3-4 minutes till they find a date and time that works to come back in. And then from there, maybe we'll get those 2 or 3 other visits. But as long as we have one on the schedule, that was something he was picked up on really well, and still does really well with people, is getting them the care that we've recommended, because we recommend it for a reason, and not just being like, oh, well, they tell me I can do 3 times a week in the report of findings. And then they get up to the front and they're like, oh, I can actually only do like one. Like, he's like, well, no, like you're not going to see results if you just come in once. So he's a really big extension there. And then he started answering phones more, started calling people back. And as we've grown, right, because there's a big difference in being a CA in a 30-person a week office versus a 130-person a week office. Huge. And that growth happened rather quickly for us and rather quickly for me. And so there were things that I was dropping the ball on in regards to training him. One, because I didn't know I needed to, but two, that just happened so fast that it went over my head that we had to really, sit back down and kind of go back over some things and refine. Like in the tone in which he started answering the phone, right? Because now we're getting more high level, right? We're starting to get more referrals and things like that. And so we're starting to get a little bit deeper into things. And he's someone I could see staying here as long as he deems necessary. But really, it happened so fast for us that it was like, oh crap, we got to train on how to reply to emails or how to, schedule screenings or things like that, because it was just getting to be a lot on my plate. And so he picked up the ball really well. But at times I'd look over an email and be like, I would have said it a little bit differently. And instead of having that grudge, I didn't tell him how I wanted it to be said. We'd go through it and why even just the smallest changes are huge. And so training has been essential for where we're going. And I think we didn't do it for about 2-3 months there, from about May to July. And so we kind of have plateaued. And now I've seen why. It's because we both have not trained enough to go to that next level.
Yep. I think that is something super important. And I kind of felt like not necessarily like a lull, but I felt us getting kind of complacent in the office. And so I just made a 50-week training calendar. And it was actually way easier than you think. Like you just take, like we have, or maybe it's not 50 weeks. It's like 48, I think, or something. But because we're closed like 4 weeks out of the year. But what am I about to say? Oh yeah. So we made this training calendar. It's actually like way easier than you think. Like it's basically like anything that you talk about in the office, but you're just kind of explaining why you do the things that you do in there. And I think like one of my biggest takeaways from Elise's episode with us last week was just the importance of doing like rudimentary in the fact of like doing them consistently, and they don't have to be super complicated foundational trainings. And so like I literally have like, we're going to do a training, it's going to be 20 minutes on the history of chiropractic. So we're going to go all the way back like 1895. D.D. Palmer was in Davenport, Iowa. Like he adjusted the sky, and all those things, and the chiropractic was created. And then like all these things that like we as the doctor, like, or at least the principal doctor, like think about and like take it, like constructive survival values. Like, have you talked to him about that? But it's like one of the easiest things ever, like, but it's so potently powerful when you take into consideration these things. And like, it's literally like the poster, like the gas versus brake poster is like constructive, destructive survival values, but just in a different analogy. Super, super clean.
Yeah.
So having Logan to be able to like explain those kind of things, or at least have like a decent grasp on them, is super important for me.
Yeah. And I think too, on that topic, at first when we first started bringing Joshua on, like we didn't have people asking those type of questions because they were mainly people in the community that you had met out networking and things like that. But then you start having not necessarily random people, but for lack of better words, random people. And they would ask him questions, or things would pop up right on an office tour. Like, oh, like, especially in our office, we're not pediatric. And so Joshua will mention at times like, yeah, we have this wide open space, and there's a chance you come in and it looks like a after school care, like kids are running around, this kind of thing. And people started asking like, oh, like, you guys see kids? And Joshua would say, yeah. And so we started training, okay, like, well, why would we see kids? Why would a kid need to see a chiropractor? He doesn't have to have this elaborate response, and I don't think even chiropractors necessarily do. But he just something where it's in the back of his head, he can pull out and be like, boom, this is why kids need to be checked. And it starts to build that pre-frame for people as we're going through. And it really just has it where, oh, why don't you take insurance? And then it's like, because
Dude, those are big things.
But those are things that have to be drilled, right? Because as Spencer mentioned, as the chiropractor, as the owner, you can spit that out most likely really easily. But for a lot of the employees, they can't, right? And so really training up on those type of things so that we are ready to go and able is huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's like people like I noticed Logan started kind of say when people would ask like, do you guys see kids in here? She'd be like, yeah, it's just good for them. And so one of my biggest things and like the position that I'm trying to take as like the owner of the practice and the founder of the practice is more of like a teacher. Like my job is not to be boss man. My job is to be like the good shepherd and like steward her in like this position and this role and into a career. Well, let me give a little background first because it'll kind of give some context as to why I say that. So my CA, our practice manager, our office coordinator, lead CA, whatever you want to call it. Her name's Logan. She just turned 19 in January.
Wow.
I know. She's like way younger than I thought, actually. Yeah. But
just so like age wise, because this will change the way in which Spencer and I are training our two office managers. Joshua is 33. Right?
Yeah.
So like Spencer's talking to someone that's way younger than him. And then I'm talking to someone that's quite a bit older than me. And it really changes the dynamic.
You're right. And well, Joshua has had like a lot of life experience, like a lot. Like we kind of sheltered in chiropractic school because like, you go through school, like you graduate high school, go through college, go through grad school, open practice. You're like, this is all I know. And Joshua, dude, he's done like a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And that guy is very eclectic. He's awesome. Well, anyway, so Logan,
like everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So Logan, I met her. I'm friends with her mom through our networking group. She's a realtor in our networking group. And I had just mentioned in our networking group one day that, hey, I'm looking for some help. If anybody's looking for a position, like you just let us know. And she said like, hey, well, my daughter is looking for maybe a summer job. She's undeclared in college, and so she's just kind of like going to college just to go. She really doesn't have anything that she's like pursuing per se. And so maybe it'd be a good fit, and maybe we hope that she stays. Well, so anyway, I interviewed like 5 or 6 people who were like way overqualified, and she was honestly just the best like personality fit. It was great. And like so anyway, I decided to hire her for the summer just because like we were growing so rapidly. I like needed the help ASAP, and like I didn't have time to set up healthcare benefits for people. That's what most people tend to want.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I hired her. Well, she had told me like after her like first month that she has unenrolled from school, and she has decided to like stay because she'd like to like pursue her career like as a CA, like, which is great. And like people think that like, oh man, like a CA is just like a small like just check people in, check people out job, and it is if that's what you think that they are, because like we have a lot of friends who talk about and they have like a really high attrition rate for their CAs. But you can also make it into a career for people. And so my whole job, and basically the whole reason I tell that long story, is because my whole position for Logan is to try to replace the value of a formal college education with a chiropractic education, but from the lens of someone who's not necessarily the doctor. So that's like my whole goal. So my whole thing is like, I'm literally giving her homework, like, hey, like you have this video to watch. I need you to write like a half-page paper on like what the biggest takeaways are, and then another half page on why it's like how we can implement it in the practice. And dude, she crushes it, which is cool.
Yeah. That's definitely something I've been hesitant to do with Joshua, is like those video trainings with the resources we have, and then making them do those papers. But it's something that I've heard now multiple times, and you're kind of the third person that I've heard that from. And I've come to learn that if I hear something 3 times, I have to act on it because it's important for me to do. So thanks for
Yeah, I
sharing
mean, I
that.
think you should because well, the whole reason I have her watch these trainings is because they're from Jackie, who is Tony's lead CA, and
Right.
she's like a salaried employee, like making like great money, like is over like has like a actual career like in being a CA and not
Yeah.
necessarily like just some like just click hi, welcome in, like you're not just a glorified doorman.
Yeah.
And so that's what I really always emphasize for Logan, is that. And so that's what we're really like working on. So anyway, I made this training so then we can sit down on Tuesdays whenever she's in and like go through a lecture type training, where I'm going to go through things like that.
Nice. And I think too, one thing that I've picked up from Ryan Ryder, we had a coaching call the other day, and he made the point, and it's a very valid point, where one, more often than not, the people that are with you at 100 visits a week, they may not be with you at 300 visits a week for two reasons. First reason is improper training on your part as the chiropractor and the owner. And then you're like, oh, they can't do everything that I'm asking them to do. It's because you never prepared them for it. And then two is there's a very real chance that they really like the way things were working at 100 a week, and they start to see 300 a week. And not that you're like doing bad things, but it's a little more higher pace. It takes a little more brain power. It takes a little bit more stamina to really go that way. And so really having that in mind, I'm like, oh wow, I need to really amp up like how we're training Joshua, especially as I foresee him being the office manager, and he's told me many times that he wants to be the office manager. Starting to lean into that and giving him more responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's all dependent on your systems, and it's really like for me, I really take ownership whenever I am given ownership. I don't want to like force my way into some people's things, but whenever I'm like offered ownership, then I'll take it and run with it. And that's kind of what I've also kind of noticed with Logan too, is she's kind of like that. And so I'm saying like, hey, like, how do you feel about taking this, like working on this, right? Like right now we're watching the procedures manual, and like her big concern is like, well, whenever we hire more people, how am I going to manage them? Like I'm 19 years old, and like what if we hire someone that's 40? Like I can't tell my mom what to do. Like well, you can. It's all about how confident you are. And so just trying to build like her confidence up, and continually like just build upon kind of her passion and excitement for being here while it's still super fresh. Just kind of continually keep that rolling is like what I'm super focused on. And I think like that's like because when you think about it, you spend more time with Joshua than you will anyone else.
Yeah.
Right. Like I spend more time with Logan than
we're together 30 hours a week. And that's just on like a regular week if we're not doing screenings or we're not getting to the office early or those type of things.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think too that's also something that's clicked in for me is like, at first I was like, oh, Josh was already doing so much work. I don't want to give him more work. But then I started realizing like, well, we're only in the office 28 hours a week. Like that's really nothing. Like we all have the time to get an hour of continuing ed in each week. And if we don't, then what the heck's the point, right? Like I know the guys listen to podcasts. I know we have this 3-hour lunch break. And so to me, that really helped at least my mentality of like, okay, assigning him more homework or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's super important, honestly. Like, and Logan has like every time I've given her assignment, like she comes back like with like brighter eyes, more passion, and like a lot clearer direction on what is expected of her. And so it's been great. So yeah, I definitely think that you should be giving Joshua some homework. And it doesn't have to be like an assignment. Like, dude, in school we do assignments. Like that sucks. But like, hey, watch this video. And like the whole purpose of, and like I told her, like, hey, the whole purpose that I need you to take notes on it is so that I can get it's like you can explain it to me. And if you can't write it down where you understand it, then I'm never going to understand it.
Right.
And so like, I just need to know that you understand. So I feel comfortable moving forward with whatever we're going to do.
Yeah. So. Right. And I think too, even to go one layer deeper on that is with, creating these systems for training and bringing on new CAs and new associates and things like that. Another big thing I've been diving into from Ryan Ryder is building internal core values. And I think I mentioned this maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
But I'm reading the book, Team Code of Honor, by one of the Rich Dad advisors, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. But Team Code of Honor, and it talks about how you need to have this code of honor of 6 to 12 statements, not like our core values are honesty. It's like, well, what does that mean? That means something different to everyone. So you have to have these clearly defined statements that is what keeps the team accountable, right? And he talks about how like every good college football team is a college football guy, right? So he talks about like Nick Saban, how they all have their code of honor, and that's why they continually win. Yes, they get the best players, but those best players are also going to Georgia, or they're also going to Florida State. But it's that code of honor that's at Alabama football that allows them to win, because those guys know immediately what to do. And so that's really been something I've been diving a lot into as we begin to scale and grow, is okay, what is our internal code of honor? And those are really what our core values are going to be. And something Spencer had said is like, when he's hiring someone, best personality fit with these core values, what I've slowly and like quickly realized, not slowly, but quickly realized, is that it's the easiest way to show someone how you're a weirdo, right? Because as the owner, as the team, you create this kind of weird, like there's just weird things that you do. And when you have this code of honor, it's the easiest way to show someone I am a weirdo because I do this or that. And so like for us, one of our key statements is, always fill up the Brita and put the toilet seat down, right? And biggest reason for that is you don't know who's behind you and who's going to need water, or who's going to the bathroom or whatever that is. And that's something that might be weird. Like someone's like, well, the Brita's half full and you can get plenty of water from a half full Brita, but you don't know if there's a family of 4 coming in and now they all want water. And we're out of water bottles for a split second. And so now we got to fill up some coffee cups with water. Oh shoot, the Brita is half full. Only 2 people get water. That's just not how a well-run organization, how like when things are rocking in our office, is how we want things to be. So
yeah,
that's been a lot of fun to dive in. Yeah. And it really is a way to show those small things to people. And on a bigger reason I wanted to bring that up is so that when you're sitting across from someone, like Spencer said, like, yes, you are interviewing them for the position, but they're also interviewing you. And you can go through those 6 to 12 statements and be like, hey, how do these sound for you? And say it's something like, showing up early. They're like, I'm just someone that, I get there 2 minutes before I'm supposed to be there. And you're like, well, our team code of honor is we're here 15 minutes early. And you're like, how does that sound for you? And they're like, not great. And you're like, so we continue? And they're probably going to say no. And then it's gone from that, right? So you know how to sift through not necessarily bad candidates, but bad candidates for you and your team.
Improper candidates.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, company culture is what I'm slowly learning is the most important thing in building a cash office, because you're not getting referrals from lawyers. You're not getting referrals from insurance. You're not getting these kind of things in. And so people buy like off of your whole culture, everything. And so if people feel really welcome with your seat, like, dude, I have people tell me like the best part of the office is Logan so many times.
Yeah. No, almost I would say, this is a big win, but we just surpassed 50 plus Google reviews. And I would say 25 or more mention Josh.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, to sum it up, guys, hire early, hire well, and pour into them like you would your own kids. Because that's what's going to ultimately bring you back the value in your investment. Because yes, your employees are an investment, not only monetarily, but energetically, emotionally, and they're a big part of your life. So if you enjoyed this kind of content, just give us a shout, let us know. Definitely go out and check the episode with Elise Rigney. It was awesome, super inspiring, and I feel very focused after coming from that episode. Zach, you got anything for the good of the order?
Keep balling, keep pushing a little bit harder, keep pushing the limits on what you feel you can do. That's definitely something I took away from this past weekend, is
right as you think you can't go anymore, as soon as you take those 10 more steps, you realize just how much more your capacity is. So stretch your limits, especially if you're young and don't have kids. Now's the time. Get after it. Appreciate y'all.
That's right. Kill comfort, going more. Like and review, subscribe. And thanks so much for listening to the What Now podcast. Peace
out.